Hello and welcome to the Cahokia Institute, our Q&A conversation for exploration series. I'm Paul Revere, the Executive Director and President of the Institute, along with my wife, Laura Lee, the Director of Research, Education, and Outreach. And on behalf of our Board of Directors, our advisors, our volunteers, and supporting members, we do want to thank you for joining us today. The Cahokia Institute is an independent, nonprofit research organization committed to researching consciousness and the human experience, following the footsteps of our founder, anthropologist, Dr. Felicitas Goodman. And our focus is reflected in three main areas: experience, education, and exploration. We respect the path of academic balance, the creative pursuit of science, while advancing, conserving, and restoring a direct experience of that deeper human connection to all of life. It's part of our mission to expand our own experiential research with the multidisciplinary understanding that's available to us today. So, as an educational institution, we take an open approach, and we continue to invite scholars in related fields that help broaden the scope of our own work and exploration. And that's why we call this Conversation for Exploration. Now, today we want to take a moment to look back at an inspiring, fun, and exciting journey of attending and presenting at the Anthropology of Consciousness Conference last week. From insightful and thought-provoking presentations.
Oh, yeah, and many of them.
Experiencing the eclipse in its totality.
First time for us, it was on our bucket list, yeah.
And
Cahokia.
To visiting the largest pre-Columbian site north of Mexico. It covers 4,000 acres. It has about 120 earthen mounds, but more on that later. We're going to have Christine Van Poel and Todd come back and share the full story at another presentation. And on top of that, I was honored to be asked to do the opening ceremony, the opening ritual for the event.
And it was your birthday.
That's right. And what an amazing birthday that was. To launch the event, to have all these experiences and to meet this incredible group of people.
The branch of your tribe, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was such a fun group, and everybody was on the same page on this one.
Yeah.
So it was one of the most fun conferences that we'd ever been to. We'd been to many. So yeah, but our motto is move the dial through dialogue. And we really appreciate the conversations that we have here. One of the things that happened when you got a group of anthropologists together was many of them said, we heard from Nick in London, and we heard from the Van Poels here, that the attendance for anthropology is down. Fewer students are attending or signing up to be anthropologists. And we're like, what? The study of us? Humans? That's the most fascinating thing of all. And so this is our celebration of anthropology, especially the anthropology of consciousness, because consciousness is one of the final frontiers, that outer space and the inner space. I mean, from the macro to the micro, that covers the gamut.
Mm-hmm.
And we believe in studying consciousness. This is what we do in our way with this institute. And so we want to celebrate and really showcase the diversity, the fascinating topics, the breadth and the depth of this. And so we have an agenda today. We have a panel. We're going to introduce them in a moment. But what we're going to do is talk about the eclipse. We've seen many partial eclipses. There is eclipse, man, we're out there watching it.
Sure.
But to see it in totality, you've got to be in the right space at the right time. So this was our first that I know of.
Yeah, it was.
I remember watching eclipses as a kid, right? With the glasses and everybody's, but I don't remember if they were partial or total. But this was our first total. And we have an eclipse chaser with us on our panel as well. So we're going to show you some photos and talk about the eclipse. The whole group went out in a bus in the middle of the conference. It was beautifully designed, beautifully orchestrated. And it was like a double dip to go to both a conference and go to an eclipse. And then we got to go to Cahokia, this beautiful mound site at the very end on the last afternoon. And we started talking about it, and a whole bunch of people wanted to go. So that was fun.
Yeah.
So eclipse, Cahokia, just briefly. And then we've got a lot to talk about in terms of the many presentations and researchers that were there.
Okay.
And how fun it was to present our work to the Anthropology of Consciousness group. I know that Felicitas, the founder of this institute, had presented there. That was, people were quick to point that out. Hey,
1990s.
Felicitas was here and then, yeah. And I know she published in the Anthropology of Consciousness. We were following up. We were there because with the Van Poels, we co-authored a paper with them that was published in the Anthropology of Consciousness journal just recently. So it was just a wonderful follow-up to present there, and everybody had a great experience in our work. So
Yeah.
this is the first of, I hope, many reunions for this group.
Yeah.
But let's take it away.
So did you want to
Introduce our panel? Yes,
Sure,
indeed. Our special guest, I have to start with you, Richard. Richard Choquette is on the board. So he was one of the organizers of this conference. And we just want to thank you and Michael Baker and Lisa Gazon for just a wonderful event that you put together. And I know a lot of planning and logistics went into that, but thank you, Richard, and welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, Richard will tell us a little bit about toys as a construct of consciousness.
Yeah.
That was his presentation. He also had the guitar, so he regaled us with lots of
incredible songs about the sun, of course,
yeah.
and
Oh,
et
and
cetera, et cetera.
my scarf today. I have to say this is my Eclipse scarf.
Oh,
These
yeah.
wonderful patterns, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting how you see this. You see an eclipse, and then everything becomes an eclipse symbol. So around you. So it's fun. Thank you for joining our panel today. I want to introduce Stephanie Fox, our other special guest, the forensic anthropologist of which I spoke earlier, and the one who had the biggest camera out there taking photos of the eclipse.
With the correct filters to get her photography was amazing.
Yep. And so thank you, Stephanie, and welcome. You presented on the myths associated with the eclipse. I want to hear a little bit about that. And in 2 weeks, you'll join us on your own field work in forensic anthropology, an exciting field. Thank you and welcome. We also have Tony Hull, astrophysicist. Good to have the astrophysicist along when you're going to go watch an eclipse. And Tony's an eclipse chaser. What was this, number 7 for you? Total eclipses, Tony?
Yes, it's my.
Well, I think 5. I think I've been to 7 or 8.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, just a
Felt
few.
like-
Just a
felt
few.
lucky.
Yeah. They're already planning their trip to Egypt, I think, the next one. And then, of course, we wouldn't have known about the Anthropology of Consciousness Conference if it wasn't for Christine and Todd Van Poel, our advisors. They went last year, and they're like, "Oh, you guys, you got to go. You got to go there."
Yeah.
And we're very glad that we did. So thank you, Chris and Todd.
Yeah.
And so that's our panel. I want to open this discussion up to any and all of your comments as we go. So
I'll be right back. I asked him to make coffee for me. It's still morning here.
He's such a good husband.
He is a good husband.
And
Anyway.
what are those little things you're showing?
Well, Richard gave us toys and all kinds of toys, but this one is a spinner, and Todd got one, and our son across the table, Roy's playing with it. He loves it too. And then Stephanie is just amazing. I love watching her talk about her work in the eclipse, but she was also crocheting mushrooms. And
on
she
the
let us have
spot.
Todd picked the big one. This is Todd's. And of course, I was just smitten with the little one. So anyway, there was a lot of fun going on in this conference. It wasn't all academic, which is a nice change of pace because, well, it just is.
It just is.
But we love toys. We love Tony. Yeah, it was just a fabulous time. Paul and Laura, I just want to say they did the opening ritual, which unfortunately Todd and I missed, but they also gave a ritual body posture on Sunday morning. And I thought it went splendidly well. And a shout out to both Paul and Laura, because they were able to talk to people and just interact. And it was just really wonderful watching them interact with everyone. It was also wonderful just for us interacting with everyone. But I thank each and every one of you right here in the panel. What a fun time.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, I want to compliment the choice of venues, the hotel. It was one big party in this central room where you had food. They gave you a complimentary happy hour. They had, it was just, I mean, there were little kids in their jammies at breakfast. There was the Amish who were part of the home show that we met,
Yeah.
the elevators and talked to. There were just a whole mix of people there.
Yeah.
So it was something like party in the central space. I thought that was such a brilliant way for a community to build on each other. So you come and go, meet in the downstairs big open lobby.
Yeah.
It was a good choice. So, hello Todd and welcome. So why don't we begin by, we want to report on the eclipse. And this eclipse was seen, Tony, wasn't it, around most of our country?
From Mexico to Canada.
At least in a partial sense. But if you were in the path of totality,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, there was that extra bonus. I mean, I remember watching eclipses, and we had Cheryl Lynn's little eclipse viewer with the pinholes. That was a fun toy to play with, but partial eclipse. So you lay back on the grass and you watch with your glasses the moon bite away at the sun.
Want me to throw some images up?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we've watched many of that, but when it's in totality, there's another special eye in the sky. Really looks like an eye in the sky. Another special feature. But let's do a slideshow. And Tony, why don't you comment as we go, or anybody else?
Okay, we'll get this started here. Play. All right. Well, this
was the group.
Yeah.
This was the bus. Yeah.
This is the bus to totality.
We had a wonderful driver and we didn't know where we were going to end up. We just headed towards the center of the path and we passed this big field. And one of the gals said, "Oh, let's stop here." Because we, had the glasses, we're looking out the bus window. We could just see the sun starting to pass across the sun. We needed to get somewhere. So this was fun.
Yeah. And the other fun part of it, of course, Richard had his guitar. So in the bus on the way, we looked, everybody was trying to think of some sort of a song that would apply. Here comes the sun, whatever.
And you knew them all, Richard. Good job.
He knew all the lyrics. He knew all the verses, not just the lyrics or we're lucky to know the first verse, but he knew all of them. And so we had a fantastic doing a sing along on the way.
That was fun. We were like just a bunch of kids on a field trip from high school or something.
Indeed.
So then we found this beautiful place to stop. And of course, immediately everybody wanted to find their spot because it was happening. We could almost feel a tinge of darkness already, but this is, we had arrived, maybe 40 minutes early or something like that.
I mean, it's like an hour and a half,
Okay.
that it takes the sun to
complete
the moon to do a complete pass over the
Right.
sun.
Yeah.
But this was at the halfway mark at the total eclipse. And so the lawn became the best lawn chair ever because you wanted to look up and watch this as it slowly moved across. So there's Tony and Stephanie setting up their tripods and cameras.
There's Todd and Christine finding their position, and then Laura and I.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Then we were able to take the punch.
3-hole punch pinhole projector that Sherilyn, Tony had brought some of those. That was great fun. Do you want to just quickly explain that one, Tony?
How does that work, Tony?
Well, sure. It's just what constitutes a pinhole. And you can see on the image on the right, the 3 holes. One is a triangle, one is circular, and one is a square. And if you look at the shape of each of these down below, you would see exactly what you're seeing, a direct shadow of the triangle, the circle, and the square. However, when you lift it up some distance above whatever you're projecting on, maybe 2 to 3 feet, you begin to have something else happen. You no longer see the 3 shapes. What you do see is an image of what the sun looks like, because then we're far enough away that you're not looking at the direct shadow, but you're looking at the what's called the pinhole projection effect. So you see, as you hold it farther away, and you can't really resolve it in the picture on the left, but they are beginning to see not these 3 shapes, but instead they're seeing the sun with a big bite out of it.
Yes,
and watching it
that was amazing.
way. And I have to say, some people had a lot of fun with this, and I like to be careful about the term partial eclipse because, that's pretty much in the language reserved for being outside the band of totality. We have the various phases of total eclipse that happen from the smallest
Oh,
bite,
yeah.
which is called first contact, to when the moon first covers the sun, which
Yeah.
is called second contact, to when the moon just moves off the sun barely, it's called third contact, and when it's totally off, it's called fourth contact. These are the ways that astronomers describe it, and it's actually a very useful distinction. And
Thank you for that. Yeah.
at second contact and third contact, we get to see something else. It's called the diamond ring effect. And I think we all saw that. It's where you have the area where the moon is just moving off, flare up tremendously. And it looks like a diamond with a ring all the way around.
We did see
A
that.
very,
Yeah.
very nice effect.
Yeah, that was great.
This is the
I
beginning.
think I have figured out a way to share the video. If you want, it's about a 1-minute video of when we actually enter totality.
Perfect. I'll
Give it a
finish.
try.
I'm going to go through about 5 or 6 pictures here, and then we'll go to you, and also
Okay.
Stephanie's. It's just Stephanie's.
Stephanie has some beautiful photos.
Both. We'll do
Yeah.
both of you. Okay. So
Okay.
this is just an iPhone photo.
I just held my phone up, didn't even look at the sun and clicked
Mhm.
that, and got that. So
Yeah. Yeah.
isn't
but-
that like an eye in the sky? We see
Yeah.
so many big eyes in our visionary experiences. It's like, there it is. Wow.
Oh, okay. So I guess that's what I had for there. So let me go ahead and stop that, and then stop share. And then now, Richard, did you want to do yours first? But then we'll go to Stephanie.
Let's see if this works.
Okay. Share screen. Yep. It's coming. We see it coming. Oh, there you are. Yep.
Okay.
Right now, you can see the big dark area of the sky back behind us. Oh, it's almost there. I'm speechless.
It's getting darker.
This is the part you don't get with the partial eclipses.
Look at it. Wow.
Lights go on.
Oh, I see there it is up there. Just a little dot of light left. Well, I'm gonna have to just look with my naked eye.
All right.
Oh, I'm so glad you showed that. Make sure you're on the right page.
I am. That's it.
So,
All right.
wow, that was
Thank you.
wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Richard, that was fun to see.
People just yelp in joy. Take off your glasses. Take off. You can look now.
And it lasted 4 minutes.
3 minutes and 45 seconds, or 46 seconds, I think. Something like
Yeah.
that, Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
That's
Steph,
right.
yeah. Stephanie, your turn to share. If you could, please. Ah, she had the filter. Look at this.
Yeah.
That's a pretty nice early picture too. It gives you an idea of
Yeah.
how much of the whole event we watched.
Wow.
So it's
It's so beautiful.
happy
Watch.
that-
Yeah.
Oh my, look at that. Nice one. Yeah.
Wow.
And there's the red dot. The red dot at the bottom
Right.
was so prominent.
Yeah. Right.
What is that? Plasma ejection, Tony? What is that?
No, it's a flare that's happening, and
Yeah.
which is plasma ejection. That's a correct way to look at it.
Yeah.
And it's certainly a beautiful thing to see that we see at the moment of totality very
Yeah.
often. So
Let's
this
talk.
Doesn't it look like the iris of an eye?
Oh, yeah.
And it does.
So glad that Stephanie
Yeah, well,
brought the filter. Yeah.
Good job, Stephanie. You want to comment, Stephanie, at all on this?
Yeah.
Well, I bet this is unfiltered, but let's have Stephanie tell us.
Yeah, this part's unfiltered. The other 3 have the filter on, and then once you hit the totality, just like your glasses, you can take the filter off the camera.
Can you-
so you
Turn the mic up.
I can't, but
Mm.
her mic's a little low. But I
Oh.
heard, yeah, she said, but once you get to that point, you can take your glasses off.
Yeah.
Like that, you can take the filter off.
Got
Right.
it.
And that's how she got this photo.
Beautiful.
Yeah, fabulous. All
And
right.
that's really what you want to see around the sun, is how wide that
Mm.
field is, that
There's
corona.
there's some sort of a transcendent experience. I'm not trying to go too woo-woo on this, but when you're standing there and all of a sudden it happens, even though I've experienced so many partial eclipses prior, this is another whole
Yeah.
totality of experience. It takes you
That's
to
the
another
piece you
place.
don't get with the
All of a sudden it
partial.
was like a wow moment, and people were crying. I mean, it was that kind of an overwhelming experience.
It's like
Yeah,
somebody took the shield
when I
away from the
encounter
earth,
people
and you
who,
see how much we're a part of the cosmos.
Yeah, Tony, go ahead.
I say that very often I'll encounter people, well, I don't feel like traveling because I have 96% here. That's almost as good as this. And I say, no, at 99%, the experience you have is less than 1/10,000th of the experience you'll have at 100%.
Yeah.
That last few tenths of a percent mean the world, and the corona goes extends very broadly. There's a brightness distribution, of course, and there's a threshold of on the detectors and how they see this, but it actually goes out even farther than that. What I love is all of a sudden seeing the sun as something that's so different from a little disk that goes across the sky, but this very dynamic living thing, which changes. It's not constant.
Yeah.
And the shapes, the forms, the effects. And one of the things that was interesting, this is a very nice eclipse, having seen many of them, but we're near a supernormal, super maximum, I should say that, in terms of sunspot counts. And this is a modulus of solar activity, and it goes on a 11-year periodicity. We're very near the maximum, and it's appearing that maybe 2x a typical maximum. So we saw something special that that will be pretty hard to repeat and to surpass. So I'm very happy Stephanie took these pictures.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I think she was very disciplined to make sure that she looked at the sun. I went to see the eclipse of the century, March 7th, 1970. It was a 7-minute duration eclipse. I saw it from the center line under perfect sky conditions, but I can't say I really saw it. My camera did. I was so busy changing the F ratio and the exposure time and doing this that when it was over, I thought, oh, it's not over. I didn't see it. But, so anyway, that was my nemesis. So at this eclipse, I did something different. I only brought my iPhone. I brought a tripod on it, and I started a few minutes before second contact and ran to a few minutes after third contact. And I was in super wide field, and I basically got the enthusiasm of people as the light from the sun modulated here. And I think Todd did quite a dance then. I have to look at it again.
What I like also is that the movement of our solar system is like the gears of a clock, right? It's been a calendar for so many ancient cultures. It's a clock. It's measuring time and its movements. And this was like from day to night on a regular basis is like the day hand, not the hour hand, but the day hand. We're used to that syncopation. But this was like the minute hand. We had a few minutes where we could see the gears of the clock moving. And it was just beautiful to experience your planet and its dance with the sun and the moon and its rotation, its cycles. Just to witness that, to have a glimpse for a moment, to see that wide. So it was, yeah.
And Stephanie, you did a presentation specifically about
the ancients'
reaction
their
to,
stories. Do you want to just comment on that briefly?
And speak a little bit louder because your microphone is very low.
I was curious as to how, well, I love mythology to begin with. I just love mythology. So since we were going to see an eclipse, I decided to try and find a bunch of stories about what people thought with the eclipse, because you can see how that was, if you don't know what's going to happen, that's probably a very scary thing.
Yeah.
So how did people kind of come up with ways to cope with this, find an explanation to it so that you can actually feel better about it, have some semblance of control, psychological ease, and those sorts of things. So I found a few stories, and I shared a couple stories about what an eclipse is to those ancient peoples.
What was your favorite, in brief?
Well, I think one of my favorites is the one I shared, the churning of the ocean, just because there's so much to it that's going on, and it's fun. And to have the creature, come along at the end and never be satisfied by eating it, since it goes out from its neck, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got
thank
it.
you for that. So,
Yeah. You wanted to also maybe talk about, you want to talk about the mounds first and then go to the
I want to just
presentations?
cover Cahokia.
Okay, let me share a screen on that and we can
Because,
talk about.
when we were talking to just people at the hotel, so many of them didn't know the eclipse was happening. And that a group of young athletes, I had to go over and talk to them.
Yeah.
This was happening. They didn't know they were in St. Louis, where there were mounds,
Yeah.
or the mound builder culture. And so I just want to say that here, this 2 bucket list items, total eclipse and the Cahokia Mounds, or a mound builder. We have a handful of postures from the Mississippian culture. We've learned so much from the Van Pools and others about the mound builders, this giant network on both sides of the Mississippi, from Canada to Mexico, of trade and cultural exchange. And here it was on the edge of St. Louis, had to go see it. And just fascinating. We just saw grassy mounds, big mounds, but they show you, this is what we saw, but they show you in these pictures just posted there. Look at this extensive, what was it, 4,000 acres at its height, I guess, to encompass the villages, this wood henge, of which you were very fond of henges,
Yeah.
and this ground plaza. It reminded me a bit of Teotihuacan. Chris and Todd, and also another monumental piece of architecture you spoke on, Todd, was the Casa Grandes and Paquimé. And so here, you think, wow, for this culture to put this together, to put the time, the effort, the building, to create these giant mounds. This is earth. This isn't stone pyramids. These are earthen pyramids. This was a huge civic effort. And it was fun to climb to the top and see the view from there. Yeah, 153 steps or something. Tony counted them. So do you want to comment on this, Chris and Todd, on Cahokia? Do you want to show some more
154 steps. Yes, I
All
counted.
of those are not the original, but the staircase where it sits as you go up onto Monk's Mound was the original staircase there, but it wasn't that many steps, but it did have an ancient stairway with steps part of the way.
Right. Yeah.
And there was a superstructure up on Monk's Mound, but it did not contain a burial. And the reason I know that is John Clark, who has been excavating on the backside of Monk's Mound, looking at where the dirt's coming from all around the area, was explaining to a group of scouts how there's no evidence of burials in that mound. And of course, being the expert on Cahokia excavating out there, he knows what he's talking about. But my figures, when I go over it, another way to think about its size is this about 3 meters square. And 3 miles, I'm sorry, 3 miles squared. So a 3-mile area is the site of Cahokia. So it's a pretty big site.
And Monk's Mound there is the 3rd largest pyramidal structure in the world.
In the world.
And so in North and South America, this is the 3rd largest. So all those Maya temples and the Aztec temples and whatnot, this is a grand pyramid in its own right.
And I'm going to add that John Clark's been excavating off what he thought was the flanks of Monk's Mound. It's a lot bigger than they originally thought. So I think by the time John Clark and his graduate students are done excavating, I'm going to guess they're going to get it up to like the 2nd largest pyramid in the world. It's really quite impressive.
And when you come and join us to really dive into Cahokia deeply on a forthcoming Sunday, isn't it interesting that Egypt, China, the Americas, all these step mounds and pyramids, it's just fascinating.
I got up in the sun. You got up into the sun. Got to talk to the sun up there, which is fun when we were talking about the solar eclipse.
Yeah.
People worldwide, and these things are often to get up to the heavens and to interact with the celestial vault.
Oh, and let's not forget the ziggurats of Mesopotamia as well. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep, so many. We look forward to that talk with you.
There's
Um,
also the wood henge, which to me has always been a something
Mhm.
significant because of the original sites around the world where they started out with wood structures prior to the stones, such as Stonehenge itself was with wood poles. And so we took a look at that. And I'll show a couple of pictures. I've grabbed some graphics because obviously I didn't have access to it at the time. But and then there's all kinds of alignments, and this has been the astrophysicists have gone out and have measured to look at the alignments to make sure that they are correct with the equinox and with the solstices and all of that, the winter sunrise. So it's quite amazing how the alignment also to the structures. This is another whole conversation, Christine, which you and Todd can bring
Yeah,
to
I have a lot to say.
Fabulous, because
What's your phone? I want to thank Crystal and Anya for taking it out there. We have a
Mm.
wonderful group shot. How come that didn't get on the
yeah, and I don't see
slideshow?
my shots of this either, but I'm going to stop this.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just
but
have
we'll
to
come
show
back
that.
to that.
I just
Uh,
want to
But
acknowledge
yeah,
them
go
and
ahead,
thank
Chris, and say a
them.
couple of minutes about the wood henge part of it as well.
They're asking you to say that.
Oh, I was gonna say, yes, I have all kinds of equinox and solstice marker. A lot of it has to do, and you had it on your slideshow really quickly about how red ochre is painted on key posts. Another thing is the late Rob Hall has written about it, and there are a lot of human sacrifices out at Cahokia, and this may be one of the ones where they make a woman become the embodiment of Venus. And so the Venus, the morning star, evening star, and they would have ritually sacrificed her out there. That's Bob Hall's discussion. And so that just part of the totality of things that are totality keeps coming up in my brain for some reason. Anyway, totality of the rituals that are happening out there. There are a lot of human sacrifices because humans have to help keep the planet and the cycles going. And that's one of the ancient things we see worldwide is humans are part of the cosmos and driving it, and often through sacrifice. But we'll talk about that another time
We'll
in
talk
more
about that.
detail.
I just want to also show this wonderful picture of
don't-
Anya and her mom, Crystal. Merve was there. The rest of us were there. So we just had such a great afternoon out there, and we thank them.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So appreciate
Bonus
I'm-
points for Anya. She's my grad student. Bonus points.
Ah,
Bonus
Anya,
points
we have
on the
to say
pieces
hello.
coming up. Bonus points.
I have to compliment. We met several 20-somethings in college getting their degrees. And we are going to cover this a little bit later when we talk about the presentations, but what you all had to say about your future, about where you're going, about what you need from the other generations, about your struggles and concerns. It just was so profound. So we want to spend a whole Sunday with another panel with you all. You were so articulate, all of you, and so many wise things to say about, what kind of a world are we handing you and what are you going to do? How are you going to,
Yeah,
You have anything to say, Anya?
Sure, her mic
Right
is turned
now.
off, but you turn your
Yeah.
mic on if you'd like, Anya.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like I'm getting co-opted into writing a paper. But I think that part of the reason that we've seen a decline in people my age and anthropology in general is that it's not something that people know about. I know so many people my age where I'm like, I'm studying anthropology, and they're like, oh, what's that? And then I tell them what it is, and they're like, oh, if I had known, I maybe would have done that instead. So I think that part of it is like anthropology doesn't do a very good job of connecting with the younger generation, and I'm not sure exactly what it is that we're doing wrong, but I think maybe a little bit more research and going into it a little deeper might shed light on what that is. And I think that just connecting it with the problems that we as a generation are going to be facing, like not being able to afford to buy a house or own a car, or just things like that, even like get a job in general. I think that find a way to say, this is what we study and this is how it can help you as a generation would help a lot in that aspect.
Yeah, thank you. I also heard you some of you say, this is my passion, and yet I don't feel I can do it because I need to go out there and be more practical
the
and
world.
helping to make the world run still. So
Mhm.
that yeah, So there's
Right.
so much,
I'll-
so much to say. I want to get to all of you. And it was
Tony,
all
Tony wants to
women
share the
showing.
image as well.
Oh,
Tony,
your
this is,
paintings. You had paintings on display.
and Tony is the proud owner of one of your paintings.
Ah,
Tony,
yeah,
why,
you can
why
you can see
did her
it behind
painting
me.
speak to you? Why did her painting speak to you, Tony?
Oh, well, let's see. Yes, first of all, that they were skilled, that there was something to them. I like that very much. But there's a special story. During the trance, I had an image, and I had not seen the paintings yet. And the image was very much like this. There
Blue and
was the
orange.
orange plane and the luminosity of that. And this was great. And then I discovered, and I can't illustrate it for you right now, that there's another layer in here that's beneath the surface. And if you put an ultraviolet light on it, something else comes out, which is really quite remarkable. And Herbie has a comment on that, of course, too. I'm sorry for
His
that.
dog.
Herbie's his
So-
dog. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony.
Oh, I want to mention that it was a beautiful theme. Every conference has a theme. This year's theme was Into Darkness, Into Light.
Right.
And so I thought it was so clever of how you integrated that theme into your paintings,
Yeah.
Anya,
Yeah.
with the day glow paints and the black light. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is hidden? Widen
Yeah.
the bandwidth, see what is hidden. So
But-
thank you for that.
And let's talk a little bit about some of the presentations now.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and open up
You know,
another.
one thing that I think is intriguing is how wide the presentations ran in terms of their content. And I want to say that this is my chance also to both celebrate anthropology and consciousness, but also it makes a few suggestions. And one of them was, I want to start in commenting on many of these presentations, was Phyllis Pasariello talked about synesthesia and a cross wiring of the senses, something that we get into involved. She also talked about non-human consciousness. And I just want to say that I appreciate Phyllis and her plea for that. Just this morning, I was watching a PBS special on YouTube called Patrick and the Whale.
Mhm.
I highly recommend this. Just free on YouTube, Patrick and the Whale. And it's about a young filmmaker that was talked about befriending a sperm whale, a female sperm whale in the ocean. He just had his dive mask on and he's out there chasing the whales and going out and interacting them, getting in the water with them. He talked about one whale in particular that when he heard their clicks, he repeated the clicks.
Mm.
He said, "This is their greeting. I noticed the whales greeting each other with a certain dot, 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 dot. So I banged on my camera, dot, 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 dot. Instantly got the attention of a female who we named Dolores. And she rolled over, you know, they can spin. He rolled over and spin. So here it was like whale whispering, you know, the horse whisperer.
Mm.
Famously, a couple decades ago, we interviewed him, Monty Roberts.
Right.
You
right.
learn the
Mhm.
gestures of the species you want to communicate with. His was horses. They have a language. It's gestural, it's auditory. Learn it and then start to dialogue. Don't expect them to speak English. Speak their language. So he was doing that. It reminded me of the my octopus teacher, another gentleman befriending a little female octopus.
Right.
And just this beautiful communion. And I thought, you know, we can't be so human centric. We need to understand that we're on a planet with a diverse ecosystem of intelligent, conscious beings.
Mhm.
They're all in dialogue. You can go on YouTube and find all the different species of mammals that befriend one another.
That makes sense.
Goats and elephants and llamas and turtles. And I mean, they're making friends. We just need to make friends across the aisle and we need to honor and respect that. And so I want to pitch, Richard, that we need more non-human consciousness in our whole ecosystem of consciousness and all the dialogue and communication that takes place.
It's called,
And for a future, presentations.
so it's called the Anthropology of Consciousness, not the Anthropology of Human Consciousness.
Thank you. Thank
Right,
you.
right, right.
So
Mhm.
I just want to recommend that film and pitch that for more on that. But what do you want to say about
Well, I
that?
was going to show you a couple slides to go back of the presentations that we did. And you can talk and anybody else is welcome to join in.
Yeah, oh,
the
it's such a
discussion.
fun group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you can see Tony up in the top corner. We got Richard. We've got, you go around the circle.
Oh, Nick and his Muse device, Emily and the midwives, Tiffany. I mean, we have a whole list of what we can talk about. Why don't we just go one by one
Okay,
and
go
just
ahead.
comment, open comment. I don't know who's here among the presenters, but I mentioned Phyllis. Let's see. Hortense, Gerardo, and Nick Long on the Muse devices, but I want to save that to the end because, yeah.
Sure.
Tibet, there was a gal from Tibet, and she made an interesting comment. She said, when somebody said, how can America help this? She was talking about the devastation of Tibet, the loss of homeland, the loss of the monks, the loss of her culture. And she said something interesting. She said, I'm sorry, but that's between China and Tibet. Bit angry about it. She said, to Americans, Tibet is no longer fashionable. And it's like, it's not like we have financial interest for you to protect like you might do with Taiwan.
Yeah.
And we were like stunned on that.
Yeah.
The Dalai Lama is reaching out to the entire world to embrace us and the importance of Tibet and the culture of Tibet. And so, you know, we haven't been doing a good enough job of, I don't know what more to say on that. If anybody wants to comment.
Well, can I just comment that the one thing that immediately, you know, my introduction to the world of anthropology comes through Goodman. And so I'm always thinking about the story of human history and looking back into that aspect of anthropology. It was interesting that the conference launched with people applying today's world and the world of anthropology, of looking at different cultures and their experiences and the inequities that are happening in the world based from
The
their
social
anthropological
justice
study.
and-
So that was an interesting expansion of me immediately jumping into that world rather than the traditional way of me looking at the ancient world through the eyes of anthropology.
And I appreciate how, as the ancients have long done, is we need to write our relationships within ourselves. We can start with that, with one another and our community. And our community now is our entire planet. We are one family of humanity. And we are also one family of an ecosystem and a planet. We have many stakeholders now in this job of writing our way. And so I think that is, we're seeing that.
Right.
We need to address it. We need to reset our relations. We need to grow.
Other
And
comments,
the
by the way, as
universe
we
at
go along,
large.
you're welcome to jump in the panel. Laura and I will continue going, but
I thought Liz Russo, which was one of those 20-somethings,
yeah.
she said she was 22. She talked about homelands and the loss of homelands and how so many cultures, and she cited a few, are turning to the internet and their groups to maintain their cultural identity. And she said, in no way is this going to replace the homeland, but it's a way to maintain our culture, the cultures, and to maintain that identity and the traditions and the dialogue. And so I thought that was very touching. We're going to hear more from Liz in the future. The 20-somethings I mentioned, Anya and Liv and many more, we're going to invite you back, Anya, to really say your piece and see what we can do. We need to hear that. The Chinese ufologist, Yardling Li, fascinating. He talked about 2 famous cases of abductees in China. And among the peasant class, he pointed that out, and how he said placing their hope in an authoritarian state, they needed somewhere to place hope. And they thought that thinking the UFOs are going to come down and save them is just one more place to save hope. It's interesting because I talked to him afterwards. I said, you know, I just met somebody from Japan who's really embraced the whole Lemurian legends of Lemurian, ancient island that got lost, and they got lost because she's telling us they chose materialism and power over culture, over people and goodness. And I thought, okay, I don't need to believe in Lemuria as an actual fact, but I can understand why that myth has taken hold for today. She brought a huge contingency of people from Japan to Sedona, where we were introduced to them. I thought, wow, the fervor of this, finding your way, finding a place to park hope. It reminded me of Jesus and the redemption, or many of the saviors. And there's just a need to place hope in something. But I think it's now time to roll up our sleeves and create the future that we want, of the world that we all want to live in, and partake of that, not wait for somebody to wave a magic wand. or take you up in the rapture. We need to all get together and do that.
Yeah.
So your comment, I know that you're all taken with this very articulate young man from China.
He spoke 1,000 miles an
Tulane.
hour. His brain was crystal clear. He didn't have notes. It was all the top of his head. And it was just like, it was like a download. And then it's like,
Where
we
did
want to
you
hear it.
find
We need to slow you down so we can totally grasp all the things that you're sharing with us. But it was really insightful.
It was deep, yeah.
It was deep. Yeah.
Any other comments on Yardling Lee? Nope. Christine?
Oh, he was fabulous. His logic was really excellent. And one of the things that I like, we've been talking, some of us on Saturday night, we went to dinner with several people, and we've talked about in anthropology, we're really fixated on the traumas and the horrors, and those are right to think about. But there's also another edge where people, and especially indigenous people, are looking for ways to use their history and look for hope and for healing and these type of things. And one of the things we were talking about with Jordan on the first night was maybe doing something about the anthropology of good. There's a theoretical movement, but I loved how his with the ufologists, how in China the abductees are using this as a way to renegotiate and come up with ways to live their lives better, which I found very fascinating. And so he, the paper coming out, I don't know exactly when it's going to be out, later this year, but as soon as that is available, I will get a copy of it as a PDF, and I will share it for those that want a copy of it. I emailed him personally. I haven't heard back yet. He took off too soon. That's my only gripe, was that guy just took off right after the conference.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to communicate with him via email, so hopefully we'll get that. But I am watching the journal now. But anyway, it's gonna be fun. I hope
The
you guys can get them
anthropology of
on.
good. That we really need more of a movement on that. The anthropology of good. You know,
I want to invite Fred Smith to join in, because he
oh, Fred, you got to go to this conference.
as a Vedic scholar and Southeast religious studies and all of that.
Yeah, you asked for questions about what you've been discussing already. I would like to know if one of you could post the name of the Chinese guy who gave the talk. I would really be interested in seeing what work he's done.
Yeah.
He's a
Is that
PhD
Tulane?
student at Tulane. I'm going to type his name into the chat right now.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've been to Tibet twice, and but they were a long time ago in 1995 and 2006, and but I can say that then there was this huge undercurrent of alternative stuff going on that was underneath which is totally beneath the radar of the Chinese government. And even the stuff that I saw in Tibet, like I actually observed a PLA soldier execute a Tibetan peasant right in front of me in the town of Gyatse in Tibet. And our group of 10 people, they didn't care. So we could see the good, the bad, and the ugly, the beautiful, and that dark side as well. And but then everything, and then there was a lot of field work going on in China and around Tibet. But that all came to a screeching halt at the pandemic times. And they barely allowed anybody in to do any field work at all for the last 4 years. So it's hard to know the extent to which there is any kind of actual real research going on at this point. Reports anthropological fieldwork in particular. There was a lot going on. A guy named Ken Dean from Montreal who did a lot of really wonderful work about 20, 30 years ago, but I don't even know if he's being allowed back there anymore. Kenneth Dean, I think he was from McGill or University of Montreal. And but I can say that when I was in Tibet, I mean, when Heinrich Harrer wrote his book 7 Years of Tibet in 1953, Tibet had 2 wheeled vehicles. We're not talking about Lhasa. We're talking about Tibet wheeled vehicles, because and the population of Lhasa was 27,000 people at that time. When I was last there were about 75,000 Tibetans. A lot of them were begging on the streets. There were something like 200,000 Chinese PLA soldiers and the entire economy had been taken over by the Han Chinese. So we can only hope that the situation will improve at some point, but it doesn't look good at the moment.
Mm.
Thank you
And
for that
so
eyewitness
that's my
report.
thumbnail summary
Well,
of that situation.
we need to know. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to mention also Julie Raymond Yakubian from Alaska, and she works with the Native groups there. And she put on another workshop, which was Ecological Grief Cafe, she called it. And so she led many of us in a ritual and a meditation of land that we want to grieve over.
Mm.
So we all chose some land and then put us through an honoring of it, a grieving of it, a ritual for it.
Mm-hmm.
But just this is about loss of homeland, loss of favorite land, loss of nature, right? And
Yeah.
we've also been hearing, Tony, you've also run into people who are given up and grieving the loss of Mother Earth already, rather than rolling up her sleeves and doing something about it. So many people have just checked out and given up. Do you want to speak to that? So we need to process this grief. We need to process it and find hope. We all need to find some hope and inspiration. So
Yeah, very, very much as you speak, Laura. Yes, I'm to various degrees. I have a regular party, a monthly party, and some of you are familiar with it. And it just had its 157th meeting without a break. And a few years ago, some entities from Santa Fe were included in this, and they kept on saying, "Can we change this into a party to grieve about the earth, to be concerned for these things, to be?" And my answer was no. I would support a separate party, but this party will remain the way it is. And this was started up separately, also in Felicitas, where I live. I think it lasted for 3 meetings, and it just did not sustain. There's again, Laura, you talked earlier about focus on the negative versus focus on the positive, and I think this was just a little too black for people, and also sometimes you get what you put your attention on, and I would much prefer, not being Pollyanna, but I would much prefer to see the good.
I just want to say, though, that Tony, I know that you weren't attending this particular ritual that she led, but this is where the 20-somethings were tearfully talking about the world that they've inherited and what did they do about it. So I truly believe that there is a time and place to process all the emotions and do it collectively in a group and find solace. And we just need to be real to our what's going through us. It doesn't mean that we need to dwell, but we need to process. You deal in ritual, Fred, you deal in ritual, Christine, and we deal in ritual.
Well,
That's part of the power of ritual too, is transformation.
Tony's talking.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tony.
Well, let me simply say I respect this, and if people need this, it's great. I would much rather have a call for action when there's a problem.
That's it.
I would rather,
Thank you.
I would rather do something, and that's where my mind and heart is. Though I totally respect that need to grieve, but maybe we don't. Maybe we can do things.
Be active. Yeah.
Not consign ourselves that it's over, but.
And I refuse to take the view that the Earth is doomed to
Thank you. I do too.
Near-term death. Yes, we have huge problems. I totally accept climate change and the issues of that. And I'm concerned at the lack of precision that we have for dealing with it, but that's a whole other topic. but yes, there are things we can do. Damn it, there are things we can do.
Every drop in the ocean matters, and that's the point of finding a place to stand and be one of those change makers, being one of those people that's committed to the optimistic perspective, or even just a realistic perspective, that I'm still going to do what I'm going to do. As long as I have the gift to do it, I want to participate in that change.
To do it. And Tony, you mentioned 157 First Friday, once a month gatherings that you have at your house. That's what we all can do. Is
that's a change
making.
That's a change making
and get
gathering. Yeah.
your group together and talk. I mean, we move the dial through dialogue. That's our motto.
Right.
Get together and talk and find
Yeah.
a heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good,
find
good
hope.
points, Tony.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I want to also acknowledge Merve Goknar. She was so darling.
Yeah.
She was from Turkey, living in Los Angeles with her family.
Yeah.
She has a celebration of trees. She said, we want to talk about the trees. So again, this is nature. We need to honor our planet, our ecosystem, the trees as entities and beings. I had beautiful talks with her.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Vincent La Liberté from Quebec talked
Yeah.
about loneliness.
Yes, that was a key element too. Yeah, right.
The midwives were there, two midwives who just were meeting and finding so much in common and finding rituals to help that process. Your comments on that?
Yeah.
Anybody?
Oh, and thank
The
you,
two
Fred, for
midwives?
jumping in. Yeah.
Yeah, Emily and Mason. So
Yeah.
thought, I mean,
Mason's with
women.
us. Did you notice?
Oh, where are they? Yeah,
I didn't see.
we can't read
Oh,
through the
there
list.
she is. Okay.
But women reclaiming that profession again.
Yeah.
Women and yeah.
Hi, Mason.
Hi, Mason.
Turn on your mic and say hi. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Calling in from West Coast, California. So happy to be here.
Oh, good. Well, fabulous. Yeah,
Well, you
you're
and Emily spoke so passionately and so eloquently on reclaiming the birthing process among your midwives, and that going back to this very old tradition and all the knowledge that the midwives of old had to process not just the delivery of a baby, but the well-being of the mother, supporting the mother and baby. Do you want to just briefly comment on that?
Certainly. So midwifery is much older than medicine, but was enclosed by the profession of medicine several hundred years ago. And in order to stay alive and remain an independent profession, midwifery became essentially a part of medicine. And that has restricted trade to the point now where midwives are very much a shadow of what the practice, midwifery is very much a shadow of what the practice used to be. And there is a backlash movement against it where people are relinquishing their licenses. They are practicing radical birth keeping instead of midwifery, and people are choosing to birth without midwives. And I think it's really important to pay attention to that trend and look to see what it offers us in terms of the bargain that midwives have made with medicine, and do a little bit of course correction here. So that was the focus of my talk.
Yeah, thank you.
It was powerful and important. Absolutely. And by the way, are there any other participants that are in the list? I may not recognize your name immediately by the abbreviations and stuff. So just raise your hand if you want to jump in on the topic, so we can have you join us as well. Thank you,
We
Mason.
want to hear more from you and Emily on
Yeah,
this. It's
and
an
Emily,
important topic.
Yeah.
So Tiffany gave a talk on the ethics of therapeutic use of psychedelics, and the psychedelics were definitely present there. Michael
Sure.
Winkelmann talked about the various cultures around the world using entheogens and what they all had in common. It was great to meet Michael Winkelmann after reading some of his papers,
And
meet him there.
Mhm.
What a sweet gentleman. So any comments on the entheogens? I always have to say, we have the entheogens within that we activate too.
Right, that's
So
that's our gig. But
yeah.
still, it was a very interesting and
all about
the
expanding our bandwidth.
recognition of the power of proper use of plant medicine and these other elements. It's mainstream now. It's being discussed widely.
It's been about time for all
yeah.
the ancient traditions to
We need to
find
make,
their place and their voice and
Exactly.
their respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
Just
was
like midwifery as well. Miras, the film she wrote, she showed a darling film, The Day Before Creation, and a book accompanied it. And really, we have a member of our community, Janet Rudolph, who also looks at the Hebrew letters, looks and decodes this so much mysticism involved in these early languages,
Yeah.
and to decode them and understand the culture. So it's about going back to the words and the original concepts and the hieroglyphs and the symbols. That was just a beautiful journey she took us on.
she was brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We need to have her come on and do a Sunday for sure.
Susan Paulson talked about productivity and asking the question, why? Why are we
Overconsumed with
this drive, and why is it in the culture that productivity is the only way to be? And I liken that to the ancient spectrum, this wide spectrum of beyond just the linear and the rational, our early cultures appreciated all aspects of the human being. And here, our culture is so focused on productivity and linear and rational and science. Well, we also have the arts. We also have a wider bandwidth. We also have so much that makes up the whole human spectrum. So I think she's got a lot of good questions. She talked about the happiness quotient in our country. It's not good. It's not high.
Yeah.
We need to look at the whole human.
We
And
have,
that's where the
we have the
anthropology of
majority of the
consciousness
resources,
has a
but
lot
we
to
don't
say.
rank very high in terms of
We're
happiness.
abusing them. We're misusing them.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
an interesting one. The other thing about that topic is the in this country specifically, we always greet each other like, "Oh, nice to meet you. What do you do?" So immediately we're looking for productivity when we say hi to somebody.
Thank you.
Who are you, Tony Hall? Oh, you do that. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me your research background so I can
Yeah,
recognize
so I can
your
put you
productivity.
on the status, ladder here.
Yeah,
Know where you
exactly.
are.
Oh,
He also talked about the Three Little Pigs fairy tale, and
Yeah.
it's like the productivity pig is the one that we're supposed to admire. So it's just built into our culture.
yeah.
These
But
subconscious.
it's not a worldwide
biases.
phenomenon as much. In some cultures, you walk in and say, "What do you do?" It's sort of an insulting question, like, "Why are you asking me that?"
Who are you?
Yeah,
Yeah. What is your joy in life? Better question.
I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a parent. Why do you ask?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Any
Chris and
comments?
Todd. Chris has her hand up. Chris, go ahead.
So a couple of things. One of the really interesting things about the paper that Michael Winkelmann talked about with the entheogens, and I realized we left that in the past a bit ago, but he was really talking about how important place was in terms of having the right consciousness, or if you are wanting to obtain a certain level of consciousness, a certain type of consciousness, you don't just simply step into it. Instead, you've got to kind of prepare and work on it, and then go to the right place and do things. And so it's not just a one step and then you've altered your consciousness instead. And you all, of course, know this is part of your practice. But also, Chris had the book. Did you want to show
Just
the
a
book?
second, let me
Oh,
go
go
back.
ahead.
The other thing I like about Winkleman, and I've been on this bandwagon a long time. A lot of this work should be done at night, and he was showing group after group after group how these practices are a night ritual and how important it is to do them at night. But yeah, she only brought 2 copies to the conference, but we ordered one and it came in. But that film that's associated with this book is absolutely one of the best films I've ever seen in my life. I just was really smitten with it.
Oh,
I'm going
yeah.
to show it to all classes. I'm going to figure out how to get it into every class I teach.
Yeah,
She was fascinating.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
She was.
Hey,
She was.
hold the book just a bit.
Oh,
Oh, yeah,
Paul's
Tony's
got
got
one
his
too.
too. Yeah. Okay.
The film was just gorgeous too, and
Okay.
it was so autobiographical and telling her story as a fairy tale, which I think is such a wonderful therapeutic thing to do. If each of us tell our story, we are the hero or the heroine on our own hero journey, it puts your life into some wonderful perspective. And similarly, tell your story as though you're the central character in a fairy tale.
Right.
You start to look at the mythopoetic elements of your life and these connections and this magical realm in which we're all operating. So I loved how she framed her story and got into the deep wisdom of her culture and her journey.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
go ahead.
I would also say what I also loved about that was she told us it took 10 years to create that film. For many of us, we kind of, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I'm like, oh man, this is taking me too long to get this out. But be encouraged that that's such a beautiful thing took her 10 years. And so that's another thing I learned. Don't rush it. Maybe sometimes things happen and develop as they should.
Is there
She did it on a very
link?
small budget as well.
Mhm.
So do what you can do with a lot of volunteers.
Is there a link in the chat room
Stephanie?
for that?
Yeah, and we want to hear about your presentation, Stephanie and Richard, but who wants to go first? Yeah, comments?
Stephanie,
Stephanie.
go ahead.
Stephanie,
Well,
ladies first. Yeah.
So the whole thing about myth and talking about stories and telling us stories on a personal level, it also helps you on the global level. Going back to the ufologists in China and stuff, whether it's real or not, imagine, it doesn't matter. It's the story that empowers you, that gives you control, psychological ease, all of those things. So it can be huge or just down to you. So the stories are what's really important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. being an English lit major, I just love the story, the subtext. What are we doing? What are we saying? It's all wrapped up
That-
in one. And I
There's
also
that
want to
famous quote that what the world is made up of stories, not of atoms.
yeah,
Right, something like that.
Muriel Ruckhauser, poet.
Okay.
I also want to comment on isolation, Todd, because you're talking about Michael Winkelmann saying the culture operates in the context of the whole, and we need to operate in the context of the whole. Our ritual is about all of its pieces. You don't isolate any one piece.
Mhm.
And we live in a culture in which we're very fond of isolating. Look at the foodstuffs, look at our pharmaceuticals. It's all about isolates from natural whole plants,
I see that.
right? Look at how we isolate. We also need to understand the power of being in the whole context, the whole body. Just as we want to have all of our sciences and knowledge be in a whole, we want to live in a whole spectrum. So I just want to point that out, the divides that we have. We can be productive and we can be everything else as a whole.
Sure.
Richard, you had a comment. Thank you. Oh, and Stephanie, you're going to talk about go ahead, Richard. Sorry.
Jumping around. Richard, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah.
Or tell us about toys as the
Um,
construct of
give-
consciousness. Your
Yeah,
presentation.
I can
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
Go for it.
Please, yeah.
The session itself was kind of like the embodiment of the talk, because we, as a group, were actually doing in the moment what I was advocating, what I was suggesting that toys can accomplish for shifting consciousness. And I was delighted to meet Michael Winkelmann. He was my roommate at the conference there, and I had read his article, reprint from 1982, about magic, and I was reading sections of his paper that seemed to apply equally well to toys, and suggesting that toys have some magic to them also. But the big thing was that within a few minutes, all of a sudden, this academic conference in Anthropology of Consciousness turned into a little playground, and we all had our little toys that we were working with, and everybody seemed to be very animated about it. Some identified and engaged with some toys that I passed out more than others. I had a chance to share my kind of one of my a forte of mine is creating models to build, and I've had lots of students do this over the year. I'd like to share something with you here.
Okay.
And by toys, I want to mention a wrapper or a straw. These are Richard's toys,
Right.
and how he adapts them and makes them toys. So any object practically.
Here we got a brain in the box, in a box.
What is this that we're looking at? Yeah.
This is a design that I made that can be printed out on cardstock
I love it.
and cut and folded and pasted together, and it creates a toy that can be used to learn more about what the various parts of the brain are. And let's see, I'll get out of this.
Do you happen to have a picture of the box with it all?
Yeah, I'm trying to get out of this stuff. Yeah, here we are. I'm
Like a
not too
brain
good at
puzzle,
navigating
putting it
this,
all together.
But here's what it looks like when it's actually built, and there's the front of it that shows where the frontal lobe would be on the front there. But the big surprise, though, is when it opens up, and then you can see down inside like, for example, there's the corpus callosum that connects the two hemispheres, and various other parts of the brain. Like there's a section here that shows how the brain stem kind of goes up from the spinal cord up to the thalamus and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a little mnemonic device that, where you can learn how the brain works with a toy.
I appreciate that
So
it's a box, because you and I were talking about how our favorite toys as kids were the big boxes that our parents would give us, and we could make forms.
yeah,
So yeah.
for a couple of years in San Diego, I supervised a maker space where kids could just come in and use our materials and equipment to create whatever they wanted to. And I would say that our biggest resource were boxes. And we had a big pile of boxes on one side of the makerspace. And many times projects began with going out over and selecting one of those boxes and then cutting it
Canvas
and
of the
manipulating it
imagination.
some way.
Yeah.
So I was delighted to give that presentation. It was so much fun watching everybody engage on that level, and I hope everybody there picked up on the explicit message that toys and playing are not just something that children do.
We you know, it's art, right? Part of a toy is the inventiveness, the creation, a canvas of the imagination to engage you. It's how kids learn, right? And so play is very vital to our psychology and just the joy of that. So that was a wonderful exercise that you gave. Thank you. And Stephanie, do you want to talk, just to give us a preview of when 2 weeks from now, your anthropology of forensics and how you apply it? Just a quickie preview to intrigue us.
Well, you can see, this is my office, so I have all of my skulls and various skeletal things, all that kind of stuff. So we'll just be looking at the skeleton and seeing what it can tell us about people once they're gone. That's sort of the
Read the
whole
bones.
thing. It's the puzzle.
Yeah.
It's figuring
Right,
out. So.
right.
So it's part like an archaeological dig. It's part like a detective story. And I think it's part like tracking game. You know, it's some very old skill sets that you employ with modern tools.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To
And-
see what is hidden.
And don't look now, but there's a black cat behind you.
Oh, yeah.
It's been fun watching your cat all this time coming out.
Yeah.
He or she's been a superstar.
Yeah.
We want to know how much your fieldwork resembles those CSI shows on TV.
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
as well. So we look forward to that, Stephanie.
Yes,
That would be
thank you. We'll
great.
talk
Yeah, yeah.
And thank you, Mason, for being here and joining the panel, because you're evening it out. Now we have a
And even
6 squares.
no, that, but she brings such a depth of knowledge and exploration with her work.
And
Absolutely.
I think women are now reclaiming our rightful place in society. And I think the midwife work and so many women showed up, all the 20-somethings we talked to, women.
Yeah, yeah.
And so to me, it's like such a celebration of
There needs to
writing that
be
balance.
there needs to be an
writing
anthropological study on why men don't attend workshops. Because you go to workshops and it's like there's 3 or 4 of us, and then boom, all the women. Like
that's why he
we
likes to hang out at
yeah,
these
yeah,
things.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
kind of an interesting thing. So
Thank you. And also your maker room. I just want to put out a call, Richard, how you described the interaction with the kids, the joy of the kids, the projects, how proud they were, the skill sets and hands-on, and just the creativity. Every school should have a maker room where parents can donate materials and then see what kids, let their imagination go. If they're not getting it at home, give it to them at school. And that I just applaud you and all that you've done for the education.
Richard,
Something that's really wonderful about that makerspace is often the parents were as engaged as their kids were. They did
Yeah.
these things together, and it was so great to watch that. But all of a sudden, they were equals in the creative process.
yeah, you kind of inspired me to go back and get a refrigerator box and go roll down the hill again like I did as a kid. You know? Yeah, it's important. It's so important. Yeah, let's talk about. Want to go to the muse?
Chris, you're muted.
I was going to say every school needs a Richard. And it'd be
Yeah.
so fabulous if you could do like a workbook and do it where you publish it, you put in those, you know, the models, the blueprints. I think it would be fabulous. I think that would be a real role in education. I would like to do one with you for my classes at Mizzou. I think it would really help me engage my students. It's just the 20-year-olds are their own challenge, but I think bringing out their inner child would be really useful. But again, thank you.
Yeah.
I did do one book called Megawatts, which was a takeoff on the power plant model that some of the people in the session got some copies of that.
Yeah.
And I did self-publish a book that had all kinds of activities around understanding how power plants work. So
Awesome.
You're part of our
I
landscape.
have done some development like that, and I welcome your suggestion to continue to do more.
I think that would be fabulous, but that'll be another conversation. And thank you for allowing me to speak more, Paul and Laura. Thank you.
Oh, no, you are.
Oh my God, that, yeah, that's what you hear.
Yeah.
I want to mention the film that was, and before we go
Another
to the
film,
news,
a different film.
there was
Oh,
a
the
film by,
light.
yeah, there was a film by a Danish filmmaker. He was interviewing Sufi Muslims, and they were talking about their experience of the light in keeping with the theme of the conference, Into Darkness, Into Light. And it was very moving and very interesting to hear so many people talk about their ritual and the experience of direct experience of light, of angels, of goodness. And of course, we're watching this, and Chris, we talked about this. The Sufis are moving. They've got this music in the background, this very rhythmic, melodic music and singing. Okay, I'm going, this is trance inducing, right? And then they find the light. There was a tearful recounting by the Danish filmmaker. He's in tears, telling the story of a dream that he had when his son was born with a heart defect. And he dreamt that the angels came down and took his son up to heaven. And he interpreted it like, God is taking my child from me in the dream. Because at that time, I think he didn't know what if his son was going to survive or not. He was praying for that. But here he interpreted that. But no, his son survived. It showed his darling little boy later in the film. And of course, we were talking, Chris, about, well, I interpret that as the angels are taking him up to be healed and then delivering him back, because we in our visionary experiences have so much of that death and rebirth, dissolution and reforming in a new way, in a healed way, or transformation, transmogrification, however you want to call it. That I just totally took that as a healing journey. But I was wondering, and I maybe we can talk to the filmmaker. They were looking into that. It was an independent film that they showed. Was that the reason, that experience of being frightened by the light, the reason he went to go seek out what are experiences of the light? So that is the whole thing, discussion. I know many of that we found the film moving, confusing, intriguing. Whole discussion around women and being cloistered and Muslim tradition. But this was the Sufis. They twirl or they rock, they move, rhythmic. Chris, I'll start with you for comments. Anybody else? Yeah.
When she turns
I was having a hard time. I didn't want to turn off. It didn't want me to talk. I agree with everything you said, Laura. It was really powerful watching him. And then I kept thinking, same thing. He's going into an altered state of consciousness. He's having that download. And he actually said he never really processed what happened with his son. He couldn't really speak it. He couldn't talk about it. But that, I'm going to call it a religious experience. That religious experience, seeing the light and having that vision really helped him, I think, prepare and deal with the traumas of that moment, and helped him be better able to heal himself too, after all the trauma of almost losing his child. But that was a good film. There was a lot in there. And of course, as women, you know, a lot of societies, men and women do different things, but they always do it to keep the society whole working. And so as a white Western woman, it was nice to have some of that private stuff that we would not normally get to see. And I found that really interesting. And I was glad that the people allowed them to do that and allowed to share that to the Western world. So I thought there was a lot of positives with that film.
Mira spoke up, and so did Merve from Turkey. And Mira talked about her extensive time in the Middle East, and they were defending that women don't always want to be with men, that they want to be in their own groups, that there's women's business, and that it's very healing for them. Not all the time. And of course, we're like, well, it doesn't have to be so structured where you can't interact with other men, so structured, so restricted. But that there is some power to being, and I know that I get together with my dearest girlfriends, and there's a certain energy there that if a man was in the room, it would change the energy, right? There's beauty and grace, women among women who can really share and be open without the competitiveness and the silliness and the da. But if you can bond on that level, it's so precious and sweet. And it's different than bonding with a man or bonding with a mixed group. It's just, there's a power to that. And I know that you speak about just being with a group of men. It's its own, has its own.
Yeah. And also at the same time being respectful to this movement of gender identity that's happening in the world and all of that. But at the same time, going back and look at culturally what we learned from the past. I know Laura and I had the pleasure of going to Uluru in the center of Australia and walking around the sacred sites. And it's very specific that they'll say this particular space.
They had caves.
This cave is women's business. Men were not welcome. And then we go to another cave, men's business. And culturally, they saw that there was a power to being able to have independence in that regard. So while we walk that razor's edge of evolution that's happening with us as a people, I still look back and say there's a power to recognizing whether you identify as male or female, that there's a male business and there's female business that's still. And then there's the two spirit people that seem to walk the two worlds or walk all these worlds.
Yeah, and Chris Todd had given us a lot on that.
Yeah.
There was also an elder cave.
Yeah.
And it was blackened from the fires. It was a low cave, so you can imagine more heat for the elders.
Right.
There was a children's cave where there was a perfect backdrop with a lot of like a blackboard with a lot of drawings on it, but they were etched and painted. And this was like learn the tracks, learn what animals leave what tracks, learn the plants. It was fascinating to see that as well. So I also want to say walking around, it's a 6-mile walk around Uluru. What was fascinating to me is that each part of what was on the land became what that space was about. So they followed what the configurations, the markings, was there a pool there? Was there a cave? Was there this? Was there that? What did the markings look like? They had mythic stories. You'd appreciate this, Stephanie. Mythic stories to go with each marking. Who was there? Who was the ancestor? What was the animal spirit there? So they read the land, and the land dictated its purpose for the people, as opposed to us coming in, plowing down everything, and then imposing our own purpose. I just thought that exchange and interaction and following the clues of the environment was really beautiful. But okay, so we touched any other comments on anything of our audience? Open up your mic.
Or any of our panel, you and I are doing a lot of the talking, but we appreciate the fact that we have your support here and that
Now
we're
we're
able
going to
to.
talk about the muse.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
I don't have a lot on that. Let me see.
All
I
right.
got the maybe.
I appreciate Nick Long and Hortense Giraldo,
Right.
who presented on looking at our unconscious biases. They had a couple of other folks on their panel as well, but they were looking at devices to read out our brain waves. And so they gave another workshop. You and I got a workshop to present and take people through our slideshow, our work. These were another, Richard got a beautiful workshop. This was another workshop where we could really have direct experience. So
Laura took these pictures, so I must apologize that they're looking my direction, but there was a group of 2 others on the other side of the screen. So we were sharing screens, and then they were taking the Muse device and they were projecting the imagery through a projector from the iPhone or the device up onto the wall behind us so we could see what was happening during our experience. And so there's a color spectrum being recognized here of experiences. Let me see. You go ahead. Do you want to say what the color?
Well, Nick explained the Muse, and I'm just pointing this out that there's 2 main points on this. One is that the devices now, and join in anybody, please, to help me describe this, but the devices are now being used to have DIY biofeedback.
Yeah.
So you can see where you're at. What are you focusing on? How's your
Directed meditation.
which on the wide
Yeah.
spectrum of states are we?
Yeah.
And Nick described this Muse device using an app.
Mm-hmm.
So he said the Muse device gives you an audio sound if you're getting deeper and deeper into your meditation, but he likes this app that shows you a color grid. So it's an XY axis from 8 to 56 hertz across the top, and then this color spectrum of red, yellow, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, just the spectrum. And blue, he's saying, being the God spot.
Yeah.
So red being the most active mind, most agitated, blue being the deepest meditation, from beta to theta. So blue associated with theta. And so they had volunteers, they were full of volunteers. Paul was one of them. And Paul putting on this headset, it's 4 electrodes versus the 220 that we wore
the 120.
when Chris and Todd took us into the
think that's-
Mizzou
Yeah.
lab. There were
Right.
220 electrodes on the
Is that true, Chris?
EEG
Yeah.
devices that we
Okay.
wore the caps in their lab.
Okay.
This was
There are
4
over
electrodes.
220 diodes, because I remember hunting for 221, and that was one that Devin couldn't find. But anyway, I do want to shout out the man
Yeah.
standing up, looking at the graph behind Paul is John Baker. He is the president of the Anthropology of Consciousness, and he is such a wonderful individual. He is.
Yeah.
We've spent now 2
Yeah.
conferences with John, and I am so impressed by him. And he's just a fabulous, I think, absolutely fabulous person. But I just want to give a shout out.
He's a
shout
bright
out.
spirit, and his enthusiasm and just going
Here he
around.
is again in the center.
Yeah, he's showing yeah. He also does, he just retired from teaching anthropology in California at a college and promised to come on in a couple months and tell us about how he likes to title his classes: witchcraft, trance, and religion. He said it's much better than the anthropology of religion. So he likes to put the
Yeah.
sexy
That
titles
gets the kids to
on his
come.
courses. I think you do too, Chris. You teach some similar.
There's
curriculums.
actually a book called Magic, Witchcraft, and Religion. It's actually a well-known book in anthropology, and that's actually the title of this course. And I'm like, yeah, we need to do that instead of having something like Anthro Theories of Religion. But your point stands. Absolutely.
And he's
So,
such a
yeah.
happy, delightful soul. So I'll just cut to the chase because there's 2 points I want to make. We're going to get a Muse. We're going
Right.
to start playing with it. I know, Chris, you've looked at it. Brian Tucker, a member of our community, has worked with it. But here's
I have one.
here's the app that actually shows
point.
you the readout. Okay, so Nick was describing, quote, the God spot as being blue. And he was saying this is when you're deepest into beta and theta, or theta showing blue.
Right.
So Paul was just wearing the headband, waiting for the Hortense to put us through the paces of what she wanted to do, looking at unconscious bias. Paul suddenly goes blue, solid blue, and this gets everybody's attention. So I have to run over and start taking pictures. And I'm like, okay, Paul, you just had your eyes closed and you're going into solid theta.
Mhm.
And beta, you were conscious, so you're beta and plus theta. But this is exactly what Felicitas found in the 1980s when she was invited to the universities of Munich with Johann Kugler, and then later to the University of Vienna Polyclinic with Giselher Gutmann, who's still alive. And they were finding, in this practice, you go into beta plus theta simultaneously. It's not that hard of a state to achieve. We found from Linda Paladin in our long talk with her that her husband, the artist David Paladin, would regularly, for his spirit journeying pictures, would regularly tested by the Menninger Foundation, beta plus theta. It's not that difficult.
Right.
But this is such an indicator that we are average people with a technique for 25 years that we've been doing that entrains our brain to go into beta plus theta simultaneously, that we in our society are not given much opportunity to entrain our brain in ways that are particularly healthy. We're so focused on rational linear thinking, right? That our society has kind of cut that off.
Mhm.
But we have devices, we have meditation techniques, many from ancient traditions like our own, that we can entrain our brain. We are in control to a very large degree of how we utilize our inner technology.
Right.
We can adapt it, we can entrain it, we can cultivate it, We can
I like the word cultivate. Yes.
mentally make this muscle stronger.
Mhm.
This to me is an indicator. I know it's not quotable science because it's an off-the-shelf device. But the first thing Nick said to me was, as I sat next to him when I was taking the pictures, oh, I wonder if that muse is broken. You were such solid blue. And then when you opened your eyes and you were engaged, you saw
Well-
the green, the red. He goes, no, it's working. Look, it's responding to what Paul's doing.
Well, John did a test on me. He looked at me and he said, "Okay, now I want you to imagine that you're on the bus to the Eclipse, but you're not going to make it." And immediately the colors shifted dramatically in that
Right,
moment, just
yeah.
second, in a
It
second.
was responding
Yeah.
to you, but your
Yeah.
resting state,
Yeah,
solid blue.
yeah.
I mean,
And-
I just want to say we're ordinary people. This
Yeah.
is just in training our brain through a technique. There's many techniques to do so. Want to credit all the techniques,
Right,
but we are in control.
right.
We have this capacity and we can exercise it
And
to
I like
our
to,
benefit.
I want to return back to this
You want me to show
idea.
your pictures again
Come
one
on a
more time,
second.
and then I want to get comments. I want
Uh,
Chris to start.
Okay, but what I want to also offer is that we have been saying for a long time, going back and standing, being fortunate to stand on the shoulders of Dr. Goodman, and that is that there's a natural state that's available to us that somehow in the West we've kind of stepped away from. And we look at indigenous cultures and they don't say alternate reality and ordinary reality. They just say reality. It's all one reality. And so it's a challenge for us in the West to think that somehow by having this expanded state of awareness is somehow unnatural. It's a very natural way for us
Thank
to
you.
experience. And coming back to
It's our birthright to enter into these
Coming
states, to
back to
have
the-
them accessible,
yeah,
to generate it from within our own
Right.
entheogens, if you will.
right.
You can also use plant medicine, but we have it within us. Thank you.
Right, and it comes back
It's
to
very
part of that
self-empowering.
presentation, that key point of that 488 ethnographies that
The ethnographies that
um
Erica Bourguignon looked at.
right.
These are, yeah, okay, the point that Paul's bringing up is
In
that,
case you missed
just
it,
help me tell the story. Erica Bourguignon was Felicitas's mentor. And Felicitas, being a linguist, helped to transcribe many of the 488 ethnographies that Erica collected for a research project with the National Institute of Mental Health, asking when indigenous cultures talk about seeing visions and hearing voices, is that a pathology or is that part of their normal, natural, and cultural state? Culturally honored, institutionalized state? And the
Right.
answer was yes. Over 95%. Yes, this is healing. This is bonding. This is part of our culture. We naturally go to this.
Right.
This is healthy. Ergo, Paul's point is, this is a healthy state. This is part of our birthright. We can all achieve this.
Right.
If you have a healthy nervous system, this is what we can do.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and just look at the blue photos. Just show this again. And then Chris,
Okay.
I'd like to go to you to comment because you've been doing this practice with us.
Right.
Look at
Okay.
this, Paul, just one by one.
Okay. Well, we don't have a lot of things to compare it to, but anyway, you can see that I'm sitting there with my eyes closed, and then sometimes because the electrodes were moving, I would hold them a little bit closer to see if I could get more of an
More
effect.
contacts.
But
yeah.
then my
Eyes are
my
open.
watch dinged. So it takes you out to open my eyes to come back out. But anyway, there's a few of those pictures that we had. And you can see by the,
Going.
no, that's it. That's all we have. That's all of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Paul, can you go back to that? Wait, go
Which one?
forward, please. I love the one where your eyes are open.
Yeah.
And one more forward, one more, sorry, right there. You're actually, what's amazing is a lot of shamans will talk about there's a veil and they have to sign. So this is David Pauladine, which Laura just talked about. But one of the things he talked about, and I'd love to be able to do this, I can't, but you have the ability to have your eyes open and look deep into the spirit world, be deep in this one. So you're having layers upon layers where you're able to see back and forth between the realms, the veil, not to sound woo-woo. I think it's a brain phenomenon. What I love about that one with your eyes open, I think you can see in the here and now and be very conscious while also being able to see and track and have that God, spa the brain. And so I love seeing that because I think that's what shamans do worldwide. And that's showing it really nicely in the world of science.
Yeah.
Goodman
Well,
would talk about when we first met her in her introduction, she talked about the state describing an anthropologist she knew that was talking with an Australian Aboriginal elder. And he said, he's talking to me, but he's also communicating far distant
yeah,
with other
sure.
of his fellow tribe, with other non-human beings, with this whole realm of consciousness simultaneously.
Right.
And she described it, we want to be experts at driving the vehicle, downshift, upshift. Where do you need to go? Where do you need your attention?
Mhm.
To be fluid and versant in all of these realms. And that's the skill, not to stay in any one state, but to go where we need to go and to glide. She said they can walk in and out of these alternate reality doorways like we Westerners walk in and out of physical doorways.
They don't
That's what
set
she
up, they don't
described it.
set up a mindfulness meditation and moment. They
Yeah.
just simply go there.
Or like
There.
Ipu Piara, the rainforest shaman we worked with, said,
No,
hey,
sorry.
we're doing ceremony in the plaza. There's kids, there's dogs, there's women singing, chanting, and we're doing ceremony. We don't need a special enclosed space. It's just life
Well-
is all of the above.
Go right ahead, Christine.
Yeah.
Well, and what you just said, Laura, just to put a big explanation point over it, as they're sitting and doing things and dogs and kids are running around, they don't need a special ritual place. That's absolutely right. But this is really why I think it's anthropology of consciousness, and that it doesn't have to be altered states of consciousness. The fluidity of the brain in these states is consciousness, this big thing. And what I like about Paul's is showing the dynamics, and even with other people in the room, that there's something more that can happen in this very fluid state.
Mm.
And that we all have this capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you want to drive your vehicle? Right.
Mhm.
So this earth suit comes with a lot of gears, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. A lot of hidden gears. So
Well, yeah, and coming back to the idea of anthropology, being attractive to generations to come, and maybe having the right title of the course, the course and that kind of thing. But also, like Nick said, in England, they don't just they have to combine it with something else, anthropology and archaeology, or anthropology and this. So they do combinations. So otherwise, because if they just put anthropology, the kids are not going to recognize and sign up. So
I
yeah.
mentioned this book. This is
Oh.
Felicitas's book, where she talks about the EEG experiments that from the 1980s. It was such a delight to go with you, Chris and Todd, into the lab at your university.
We'll
and
look forward to the
have
results.
Today's, EEG machine. So we're looking
see.
forward to those
Yeah.
results.
And
I just want to mention blood pressure lowering, pulse rate rising, another unusual hallmark of this practice, and a huge surge of the beta endorphins of well-being, the joy, a lessening of stress. So I just want to complete that.
I want to talk a little bit about the mission of this institute one more time, though, because we really are saying that there's a global collective consciousness that goes on that we're trying to tap into through these worldwide people with intention, organizations,
Yeah.
gatherings, people that are saying, like Tony pointed out earlier, not necessarily buying into the doom and gloom, but the other side of things say, no, I'm optimistic that the power of spirit always rises up, that we can have a path forward through no matter what challenges they are. And look back at our ancestors and the challenges. And I say ancestors, meaning all cultures, all aspects of it, where we had to rise up from some tremendous, terrible times of struggle for humanity. Humanity
Talk
comes
about
around.
climate change. How about going from the ice age to this interstitial
Humanity
warming
has a
period
way of stepping up to the
and
thing.
adapting?
So we lose our focus and we get distracted. We live in a world of mass distraction. But if unfortunately it ever happens that the technology goes down and we have to go back to the human technology within ourselves, we'll find a way. We'll go back to the human technology of without an iPhone, without a computer, without just understanding how to be human and cooperate with the planet around us. And maybe that's coming back to the
cooperate with the planet around us.
and maybe that's why that whole idea of anthropology of consciousness is not limited to humanity. In fact, it's really important that it's not, that it's really a time and period in history where we need to keep recognizing, like we have the great advantage of the projects like Tony works on, the looking at the space telescopes and the imagery bringing back to us, keep reminding us constantly that we are made of this stuff. That is us.
Stardust.
Stardust. We are
The
this
whole
stuff.
evolutionary. Yeah. And the work with toys, the
Yeah.
work with ancient cultures, midwives, empowerment,
That's humanity.
seeing what is hidden and myth, Stephanie, the 20 somethings and what you're going to bring to the table. We're so excited to dialogue with you all. And what's next on the Anthropology of Consciousness roster, Richard? Can you speak to that? I think it's up to you to announce next year's theme. I think if it's been discussed.
Since you're on the board.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to pass that over to Stephanie because she's next year's program chairman.
Oh, that's even better.
Stephanie, all right. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, next year we're doing just on my brain. Magic and mystery.
Say it again. Say it again.
Magic and mystery.
How do you mean that in an anthropological sense?
Oh, well, the doors are open wide for all sorts of things. I know Christine has a lot of cool magic stuff, and Richard was already ahead of the curve with some of his magic stuff, so maybe he can double down on some of that, and that was the biggest one. So yeah, and then of course mystery, I added that because ancient mysteries, so there's a bit of magic that goes with mysteries, but also because I'm a forensic anthropologist, and you know, there's all the cool things in Vegas that were mystery involved that I did. So.
And you mentioned
Well,
Vegas.
and in the ancient world,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I would say in the ancient world, the mysteries usually have a healthy amount of psychedelics, so it can bring it back to stuff that some people in our society really loves. I'm just saying that with that, but
yeah, it goes. It can go. Yeah.
And Fred Smith, we need you.
Yeah, Fred. Yeah.
At this.
Yes, thank you. I actually presented at this conference in either 2006 or 2008. Can't remember the year, but it was at Asilomar in California. And it seems that the nature of this organization has changed really a lot since then. That year was totally dominated. 5 talks by one person, namely Tanya Lorman, of course, who always has a lot to say. But you know, it really looks a lot more exciting to me now that I've joined the ranks of the elderly unemployed. I don't have to be responsible to anybody in academia anymore. And but I mean, I was trying to look at your website to see if I could find a listing of all the talks that were given this year. It must be hidden there somewhere. Is it, Richard?
I'm not sure. We'll put it up on the website. Thank you for that suggestion. I'll make sure that we get it up there.
It was powerful. Yeah. Good idea.
I want to say that at the talks, Fred Smith has many talks on our YouTube channel from this forum. Chris and Todd, many talks. Tony, many talks. And we're looking forward to hearing all and adding the 3 of you and more.
Yeah.
We want to talk to Nick and Hortense and Mira and Verb. We want to talk to everybody. Michael Winkleman. We want to talk to all of them. So we're just so pleased to find another branch of the tribe with you all. And congratulations on putting on such a wonderful, and for exploring not only anthropology of consciousness and combining the two.
Well,
what a big scope. And
coming back to what Fred just said. Yeah. One of the things about this conference, Fred, and I don't have the history you do to know about the past, but I will say that it was not some sort of stuffy, all the presentations were free flowing. There was community.
Length too.
There wasn't judgments. Yeah, there was tons of 15-minute presentations back to back to back. And so there was an opportunity for everybody to have a time. And then also, more importantly, is sitting around with some food and a glass of wine afterwards and discussing even further.
All the different conversations to be had. Okay, got to mention this was a wonderful eclipse. We all saw a lot of clips. Christine brought you cupcakes.
Oh yeah,
so
I got
cute.
that.
with the corona and frosting, and then a chocolate round circle for the moon.
It was an Oreo cookie
Yeah.
on top of a cupcake, and it was the eclipse. And the eclipse, they lasted for several days, but every single one of them.
Brought so many. Yeah.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you for helping celebrate. So
Yeah,
good
what
time
a
I had by all. So
well,
Any
wow.
comments? Any last? We didn't hear much from you, Mason. Anything else? Tony? Yeah. So
No, I was just actually trying to upload the program so that you could see it. I have a hard copy or a digital copy of it, so you can see all of the lecture talks.
Oh,
very good.
Oh,
Yeah,
can you mean right now you have a chance to load it up on the screen?
Yeah, maybe I can on the screen. I was just going to put it in the chat.
Oh, it's
Okay.
in the chat. Oh, that'd be great.
Hold,
Okay.
give me a second. I'll get it there
That
for
would
you.
have been smart for us to add that. Duh.
We can't do everything.
That's okay.
Right.
I've got it.
Oh, that's great.
It
Thanks a
takes a
lot.
village. It takes a village. Yeah.
So,
I just looked
ahead.
on our website, and there is a page where we post lots of our conference programs. The 2024 isn't up there yet. It will be before too long, but I put the web address up in the chat. So if you wanted to browse through our conferences over the years, you could certainly do that. And our current 2024 will be up there shortly.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to see how it's changed a lot. I mean, since I gave my talk in the mid 2000s, my research has really gone into areas of, let's say, magic, but it's, there's explanations for it. I mean, like the US government, your US government that pays for a lot of stuff that we may not like, has paid me to research in India on the relationship between clients and oracles. Okay. And you can kind of call that magic by some definition or other. And I've been slowly writing up my results on that. So something like that I could do, and maybe even with the stuff that Christine does.
Yeah.
Christine,
Beautiful.
define magic and then tell us a preview of what
Go
you
ahead.
may introduce.
Let me just spin back real quickly just to entice people. Stephanie, is this okay? We try to entice people. It's going to be in Vegas. And the president of the society has some magic up his sleeves. I think he's thinking about doing. I don't want to steal his thunder, but anyway, Stephanie, we're looking forward to seeing how this happens. But there's a lot of ways to define magic. There's, of course, our common of stage magic. It's all trickery. There's nothing there to it. I don't really like that definition, but I understand why people find that useful, stage magic. But I don't know. I haven't found a really good definition I like, so I'm throwing a bunch of them out next week. But I think the idea of magic being the magi or something like that can elicit changes through ACS. So in trance states or static, they can communicate with spirits or they can engage with forces. But more importantly, using the spirits or the forces, whatever they're doing, to elicit real changes in this realm, in this world of the mundane.
Right.
And that's where I'm going. But even the very first discussion of magic academically was in 1902 by Marcel Mauss. And he said, shaman and magicians both fall in ecstasy. I'm like, yeah, I think he's right. Over 100 years ago. So I do like that, which means Kuya in this practice with CI, when we're doing ritual body postures and we're falling to use Moss's word, falling into ecstasy. If we are able to channel and do things in that state, that would make us magicians, which is kind of a fun thought. I don't have those skills, but anyway, that's one of the things I'm working on for the Society for American Archaeology is convening in New Orleans on Wednesday. We're going to be going down. Our session on magic, trance, shamanism is on Sunday morning. I'll be talking at 11 o'clock on that. And Todd, do you want to add something to us about that?
Well, magic is widespread, and so we don't think of it as magic. But the whole throwing salt over your left shoulder, throwing salt over your left shoulder, avoiding breaking mirrors because of 7 years bad luck, having a lucky rabbit's foot or a lucky horseshoe. Those are all kind of folk magic that we use, but in a lot of cases, magic can be very formal, very real, and kind of central people's lives as they work to interact with the divine and control luck and make sure their lives are going the way they want them to go. And Fred, I know that this is one of the areas you've studied.
And we look forward to working with you or helping you make sure you present in Vegas next year. I would love to see you present something.
Yes, Bianca, the general public is so welcome, and we want to see more of that.
Yeah.
I want
Tony
to say
has
that,
his hand up.
ecstatic trance is the term that Felicitas gave for this state. Ecstatic being both step outside your normal boundary,
Spaces.
and it's joyful, it's juicy, it's creative, it's blissful. So that huge surge of endorphins, oh yeah.
Tony?
Thanks.
Sure,
We got to conclude
thank you
now.
very much.
So,
Go ahead.
Tony, go ahead. Final words from everybody.
Okay, very good. Okay, I wonder, particularly what Chris and Todd said, and how you all feel about maybe there's even a broader look at magic. And I tend to look at magic at being sometimes the unexpected ways things are organized to happen. It can include coincidence, sometimes called serendipity. It can include just how somehow the one fact that you needed to know happened because you happened to have gone to a lecture 10 years ago, and all of a sudden it comes and blossoms forth that it just glues the picture together. And this can happen in so many ways, even in our connection with the world, the animal world we were talking about. Just the rocks and the places and what happens in our brain when we look at an eclipse. Are we the same after we look at it?
The magic of the eclipse.
Just as something to consider, and how does that enter into how things unfold? It's to me, it's in part, and I wonder if I'm incorrect, a little bit different than the nuts and bolts theory of how the world is organized. That there does seem to be more. These scientists I work with and talk with, some agree. Even my recent house guest, a Nobelist, agree that things come in a kind of very special way. And so I mean, this is where my mind went rather than intentional magic, although certainly I participated in trance, I participated in many other activities. I've traveled to bizarre places in the world, and I've sought, but things also have come, and that
Thank you. To live with
I'd
that
like
sense
to respond
of the
to a
goddess.
question that Bianca put up on the message board. She asked if the conference is open to the public to attend. And yes, it is. I attended and presented for many years before I actually became a member and joined the board. So yes, it is. It's open to the public. They're very welcoming in that way. And also thank you, Mason, for going ahead and posting a program for our conference that we had last week. So Fred, you can go ahead and click on that and get an idea right now before it goes up on the website.
And I just want to say, to live where that sense of the goddess is alive and magic is afoot. I love that saying.
Yeah,
that just adds so much to our joy of life and our understanding of life. Thank you all for everything that you do. I'm going to give the last word to Stephanie as the program chair. And, just thank you for all, the whole board of the Anthropology of Consciousness, and for publishing the article that Chris Todd and Paul and I submitted.
Can't wait to see everybody in Vegas.
all right.
Thank you. And we'll see you on the 28th,
Let's face
Stephanie.
life itself is magic. Anyway,
Thank you. Life is magic.
Love is magic.
Real life is magical.
Okay, exactly.
Miraculous.
And the recognition of it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Bye, everybody.
everyone.
Take care.
Goodbye.
Happy spring.
Wonderful to see you all.
Blessings, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great seeing you all. Bye.